11-month rent agreement, the real legal game of tenant and landlord. At around 9 o'clock at night, a family was putting belongings into a new rented flat. The children were happy, the mother was looking at the kitchen, and a paper was in the father's hand. Written on that paper was, rent agreement, only for 11 months. He suddenly asked the broker, "Brother, there are 12 months in a year, then why is the agreement for 11 months? The broker smiled and said, "Sir, this is how it happens in India." But this very answer starts the real fear. Will the house have to be vacated after 11 months? Will this agreement work in court? Can the landlord suddenly increase the rent? And the biggest question, what is saved in 11 months instead of 12 months? Lakhs of people live in a rented house in India. Some change cities for studies, some for a job, and some for a better life with family. But in the hurry of getting a house, the most important paper is often signed quickly. A rent agreement is not a simple formality. It is a written trust between the landlord and tenant. This very paper tells how much the rent is, how much the deposit is, how the house will be used, and what both of their limits are. The first question is exactly this: why is an agreement necessary for renting a house? Because without a written agreement, the matter rests only on memory. And when a dispute comes, the memory starts speaking in different directions. The landlord can say that a different rent was fixed. The tenant can say that the deposit was to be returned. Someone can say maintenance was included. Someone can say it was separate. The agreement stops these arguments on paper. A good rent agreement reduces confusion right at the beginning. The rent, due date, electricity charges, water charges, maintenance, parking, repair, notice period, and security deposit should be clearly written in it. For the tenant, the agreement is proof that they are living in that house with legal permission. For the landlord, it is proof that they did not give the property to an unknown person without condition, but gave it on clear terms. Many times, the tenant needs address proof. The rental address can be asked for in a bank account, office records, school admission, internet connection, or gas connection. In such a situation, the rent agreement comes in very useful. Now comes the second and most famous question. When the year is of 12 months, why is the rent agreement made for 11 months? Its answer is not just tradition, but is connected with cost, process, and legal convenience. In India, according to the Registration Act, a long lease, especially a lease of over 1 year, can come into the category of registration. For a registered agreement, processes like the sub-registrar office, stamp duty, and registration fee get attached. From here, the path of 11 months became popular. An 11 months agreement is generally considered a short-term arrangement, therefore people consider it an easy and low-expense path. This does not mean that 11 months is some magic number. The real thing is that people keep the agreement up to 11 months to avoid the registration complexity of 1 year. A government record is made in a registered agreement. In this, stamp duty can be higher, registration fee can apply, and parties might have to follow the office process. Small tenants and landlords want to avoid this. The third question comes, for how much can an 11-month agreement be made? In practical life, in many places, people make a rent agreement on a low-value stamp paper or e-stamp and get a notary done. In many cities, a basic agreement is made on a stamp paper of 100 rupees, 200 rupees, or 500 rupees. But this amount is not a fixed all-India rule. Stamp duty can change state-wise. Notary means that the attestation of signatures and the document has been done. But a notary is not a replacement for registration. The legal strength and the level of record are different between a registered agreement and a notarized agreement. The fourth question creates the most fear. Is an 11-month rent agreement valid? In common understanding, its answer is yes, but the correct answer is a little cautious. If the agreement is made on proper stamp paper, both parties have signed, terms are clear, and the period is 11 months, then it can work as evidence between the landlord and tenant. But if proper stamp duty was not paid on the document, or terms are unclear, then a problem can come up in a dispute. For using the document as evidence in court, the correctness of stamping can be important. Therefore, one should not relax just thinking, got a notary done. Reading the agreement, checking the stamp duty, taking signatures, adding witnesses, and keeping the copy safely is just as necessary. The fifth question is whether a rent agreement can be made only for 11 months. Not at all. If the tenant and landlord want, they can make an agreement for 12 months, 24 months, or even more than that. Just that in a long period, the need for registration, stamp duty, and a formal process can increase. Therefore, a registered lease can be more useful in commercial property, an office lease, or long-term family rental. Many people choose an 11-month agreement because they want flexibility. The tenant does not know for how much time the job will remain. The landlord also wants to keep the option open for selling the property or family use. But along with flexibility, uncertainty also comes. Therefore, writing a renewal clause in the agreement is very necessary. Staying only on a mouth promise can create tension later. It can be written in the renewal clause that after 11 months, the agreement will renew with mutual consent. How much the rent revision will be, how many days in advance notice must be given, this can also be clearly written. The sixth question is the real fear of the tenant's mind. Will the house have to be vacated as soon as 11 months are complete? Generally, if both parties agree, the agreement can be renewed. Leaving the house becomes necessary only when the agreement ends, renewal does not happen, the notice period gets completed, or the eviction process starts on legal grounds. Just a calendar being completed does not create a situation of suddenly coming onto the road in every case. But the tenant should understand that ignoring the expiry date is not safe. Talk of renewal should be done in written form with the landlord before the agreement ends. A WhatsApp chat can also help, but a formal renewal is better. Writing a fresh agreement on new stamp paper, revised rent, updated deposit and new terms is a much cleaner way. Renewal is important for the landlord too. If the tenant is good, gives rent on time and maintains the property, then renewal can become a peaceful arrangement for both. The seventh question is connected with a rent increase. Does the rent increase automatically after 11 months? No, there is no such universal rule everywhere automatically. How much the rent will increase depends on the agreement, local market, state rent law and landlord-tenant negotiation. In many cities, a 5%, 8% or 10% annual increase looks like a market practice. But there is a difference between practice and law. If it is written in the agreement that rent will increase by 10% upon renewal, then that becomes an agreed term. If it is not written, then the matter will be fixed through conversation. The tenant must definitely read the escalation clause while signing the agreement. Many people look only at the rent but skip the paragraph regarding the rent increase. Later, that same small paragraph becomes a big shock. The landlord too cannot do a rent increase in an arbitrary manner, especially where rent control or state tenancy rules apply. Therefore, increased as much as desired is not always a legally safe position. Now let us look at the other side of the story. A landlord gives his house to an unknown person. There is fear in his mind that the property should not be misused. Illegal activity should not happen, the rent should not get stuck, and it should not take years to get it vacated. The tenant's fear is different. He thinks that the deposit should not get stuck, notice should not be received suddenly, the expense of repair should not be put on him, or shifting should not have to be done repeatedly with family. A rent agreement is a tool to balance both of these fears. It is made not to make any one party powerful, but to right the responsibility of both. The full address of the property should be clear in the agreement. Flat number, floor, building name, society, city and even PIN code should be written correctly so that an identity dispute does not happen in the future. The details of the tenant and landlord should also be written clearly. Name, father's name, mobile number, permanent address, ID proof details and signatures should be proper. The matter of security deposit is very important. How much deposit was given, whether given in cash or through bank transfer, is refundable or adjustable, on what basis deductions will happen, all this should be written. Many disputes happen on the deposit itself. The tenant says return the money. The landlord says painting damage or unpaid bills will be deducted. If the agreement is clear, the fight is less. The repair clause also quietly becomes a big issue. Who will do small repairs? Whose responsibility is a major leakage? Do the appliances belong to the landlord or the tenant? It is better to write the answer to these questions on the first day. The electricity and water meter readings can be mentioned in the agreement. If the reading of the entry date is written, the confusion of an unpaid bill at the time of exit reduces. The clause of the notice period is also very necessary. Usually a notice of 1 or 2 months is written, but the parties decide this. If left without notice, the deposit can be cut. A lock-in period is a different thing. It is written in some agreements that the tenant will not leave the house before 6 months. If they leave, a penalty or deposit adjustment can happen. The tenant should not sign without understanding the lock-in. In a job transfer, family emergency or city change, a lock-in can prove costly. The landlord too should write the entry rights clearly. He can do an inspection, but with a reasonable notice. The privacy of the tenant is important too. The house is rented, this means the landlord can open the door and come inside at any time. It is not like that. The tenant should get peaceful possession as long as they are following the agreement. A subletting clause is necessary too. The tenant giving the property on rent to someone else without permission is a big risk for the landlord. Therefore, subletting clearly allowed or prohibited should be written in the agreement. The use of the property should be written too. Using a residential flat for an office, storage, hostel or commercial activity can raise a problem in many cases. The point of police verification is practical too. In many cities, landlords get tenant verification done. This is for safety and record, but the process depends on local police rules. Now the question comes whether an online rent agreement is right or offline. Today, facilities like e-stamping and online registration have increased in many states. But availability changes according to the city and state. An online agreement can be convenient, but the tenant and landlord should see that the service is genuine, stamp duty is correct, and the document is in a legally usable format. Keeping a soft copy of the agreement is good, but keep the signed hard copy safely too. Both parties should have one copy each. It is always better to make payment through bank transfer. A rent receipt or UPI record can become proof in the future. In a cash payment, the problem of proof comes quickly. A rent receipt is necessary, especially for those people who claim HRA. The employer can ask for a rent receipt, PAN details or the agreement depending on the amount and company policy. Now it is necessary to break a myth. An 11-month agreement does not give unlimited power to the landlord. The tenant also gets rights, and the landlord too cannot take action going outside the law. The second myth is that a registered agreement is always unnecessary. If the tenancy is long-term, the rent is big, there is commercial use, or a high-value deposit, then registration can become a safer option. The third myth is that an oral agreement is enough. In old times, houses were available on trust, but today a written agreement has become a practical necessity in urban rentals. Now imagine, that same father is reading the 11-month agreement. Earlier he was feeling scared that this paper is weak. Now he is understanding that a weak paper is not dangerous. Weak drafting is dangerous. If the rent, deposit, renewal, notice, repair and rent increase are clearly written in the agreement, then an 11-month arrangement can also be quite practical. But if the agreement is copy-paste, dates are wrong, names of parties are misspelled, deposit is not mentioned, and the renewal clause is missing, then leave aside 11 months, even 24 months can be risky. The tenant should read every page before signing. Do not leave a blank space. If there are changes, do initials. Take signatures of witnesses, and keep the payment proof separately. The landlord too should take tenant KYC, payment history, purpose of stay, and emergency contact properly. This is not distrust, it is responsible renting. The most important thing is that the agreement is not a paper meant to scare. It makes the relationship professional. When terms are written, clarity works instead of emotions. An 11-month rent agreement is popular in India because it is considered a simple, flexible, and low-expense path. But turning convenience into carelessness is the biggest mistake. If you are a tenant, do not get happy just looking at the house balcony and sunlight. Look at the lines of the agreement just as carefully because your piece of living is hidden right there. If you are a landlord, do not look only at the rent amount. Keep the terms of protection, maintenance, misuse, notice, and renewal clear in the agreement, because the property is an asset of your hard work. The real question is not whether the agreement is for 11 months or 12 months. The real question is whether the agreement has been signed after understanding or has been done just in a hurry on trust. Because a house is not just the name of walls, doors, and a roof. Even in a rented house, a person keeps their sleep, family, and daily life. And for a landlord, that house is not just an empty flat. Many times it is a part of life savings. Therefore, a rent agreement becomes a silent guard of the protection of both sides. So next time when the broker says, "Sir, an 11-month agreement is normal," do not just smile. Ask him, where is the renewal clause, what is the notice period, how will the deposit deduction happen? Read that paper, understand it, and then sign it. Because a small clause can save thousands of rupees, months of tension, and unnecessary disputes later. An 11-month agreement is not a thing of fear. A thing of fear is an agreement signed without reading. And the profitable thing is exactly this, that clarity always turns out cheaper than rent.
If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible. But in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.